the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
That beat, though.
Yeah. That's Gabe from our office, actually.
What?
Yep.
Shout out Gabe. I hear it.
Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. We are discussing the future of work, AI, creativity, and whatever else comes to mind with our guests today. I'm Steven Sakach here again with Mike Liwski. We are live, so if you have questions or comments, send them along. Mike, introduce our special guest today.
Absolutely, Steven. And thank you. I'd love to. So today's guest, Roshmond Patten, is a creative force who really stands at the intersection of the arts, technology, and community action. Some is a renowned creative director, as you'll hear today a lot more, an AI specialist, and a hip hop artist who his work has even been included as the voice on shows like Atlanta and the Wu-Tang on Hulu. Over the past 2 decades, he's been a trailblazer in digital transformation, leading cutting-edge campaigns for big names and advocating for the efficacy of AI practices, which we know are really important as this AI boom is ongoing. Some's passion for creating meaningful change extends beyond the screen. He's deeply involved in community activism, including work with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. As a Virginia Tech ICAT fellow, Some continues to push the boundaries of how AI and ethics intersect in the world of business and media. We know that's really important, to our audience. We'll hear a lot more about that today. So whether you're in the boardroom, the studio, or with AI, Some approaches every project with a blend of creativity and responsibility, making him really a true leader to help us shape the future of how we work. And so we're really excited to have him here today, his vision on innovation and his human touch. Some, welcome to the show. We're super excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. What an amazing intro. Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, Mike gives those rock star intros.
Man.
Some a lot of places I want to go with this conversation. I really want to start by diving into AI in a few different perspectives. I've got a lot of both worries and many hopes in there. And I was trying to debate, should we start off with the negative or the positive? Let's start off with the positive. What in particular are you kind of excited about or hopeful about with really the emergence of how AI has come on board in the past couple of years?
I'm excited about the democratizing of capabilities to communities and people who maybe haven't had access to create or output or ideate at the level that is competitive in the current kind of paradigm that we're operating in. They can now, they now have an opportunity. I see an opportunity materializing where a lot more people can hop into the ring and express themselves creatively. I just took part in a short film competition, an AI-driven short film competition. And that process showed me that I think that there's probably some sort of new visual languages probably going to come out of generative AI, similar to how graphic design emerged or things of that nature. Because of the way that generative AI is processing animation in motion, it's requiring us who are playing in that realm to think differently. And so I think that thinking differently is opening up new pathways that will open up new visual languages. So those are some of the things that I'm excited about, democratizing, decolonizing, and new languages appearing and new modes of communication and connection.
Yeah, it's definitely like breaking down gatekeepers and things that were there before in certain areas, I think. But the democratizing, what I think of that is like just the educational opportunities or growth opportunities that like anyone anywhere in the world now with a phone can just go on to Chat GPT and say, teach me about this or something. And they've got that at their fingertips. And I think that's That's going to make a big difference. And I don't know what kind of difference, but huge.
Well, you ready to get into the negative?
Yeah, I know. This is where I'm going with the negative, man. I'm like, this is my dark side. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's also, I think, connected to what I see as probably the root cause of a lot of humanity's issues on the planet, which is, okay, it's great that now tons of people will have access to this technology that can fast track them into humankind's knowledge base. That's exciting. But then one has to be able to vet and decipher the information once we receive it from AI, because AI, as we know, is not infallible and its outputs are highly flawed, at this stage. And so people need to be educated on how to train and manage and understand our relationship with AI. We can't just take what it spits out and run with it. We have to think, we have to have certain considerations. How is this model trained? Where is the data coming from? Was it trained ethically? Was the data, input ethically, sourced ethically and input in a mindful way? And so I think that there's also an imminent danger of now, in this era of disinformation and misinformation, and where people are educating themselves in faulty ways, there's no protocols. Now we're about to expand that possibility in that arena of misinformation and disinformation now, because it will be AI powered. And so we'll have a lot more people who may be possibly misinformed because they're getting information from models and don't know how to vet that information. And that could be a problem.
Yeah. Like truth, it's going to be like, people are going to be chasing what is truth to some extent because of the visuals and things that they see that they aren't sure they're really seeing what they're seeing. On that negative side too, like I see AI as being a tool that can help grow consciousness, but I also see it as a tool that's come along from a place where this is a very advanced technology by advanced society, and it can go in anyone's hands. And now we can have, the people with really bad intentions with something super powerful. And whether that's, hey, there's like a Netflix show talking about how hey, can we switch this to make this, AI come up with bad biological molecules, and they turn on their computer and then come back, the next morning and there's 10,000 of them. And, it's like a 5-year-old Mac that they're using. And they're like, oh, crap. And so I think on that dark side, yeah, it can give just powerful tools to a lot of people who have really bad intentions too. So I do worry about that. If we want to go down that path for sure.
Well, I think the tool is already in hands of very powerful people with bad intentions. That part doesn't really, or not great intentions. That part doesn't really shake me up so much. And in fact, probably what shakes me up more is the technology falling into the hands of people who think that they have good intentions, and they don't. They don't have everyone's best interest in mind, but they think that they do. Those are the worst villains in our stories, right? Are the ones who truly believe that they're doing something that's of service to people, and they kind of get evangelical and they get the blinders on about how they're moving without thinking about how it's affecting others. And so that kind of is connected to what I was saying earlier too. When you get the technology in the hands of masses of people who aren't properly educated, because that's really the root problem, is the lack of education, regardless of intentions. I think that a well-educated population will be capable of handling the technology responsibly. I can get into why maybe people aren't as educated as they should be around, what's the word I'm looking for? Media literacy and
critical thinking, media
critical
literacy.
think. Yeah, all of that. So there's a dearth of education in that area, which to me should be prioritized. I'm sorry, I'm clearing my throat so much. A dearth of information. Or a dearth of education in people in terms of how to think critically and assess things, and what media literacy is. And it was not a big deal, maybe not as big a deal 30 years ago, to teach kids how to be media literate or whatever. But now it's like, to me, that needs to go right up there with everything else that we deem essential, that will keep us safer.
Safer. Yeah. No, I agree. That's like we almost have to readjust how we're teaching people because of the new media and stuff out there for people. Yeah. I'm curious, you kind of mentioned a little bit, touched on the art of AI and where it's sourcing its materials from. There's a lot of ethics around that. And, obviously we've kind of, in Hollywood, we've seen like last year, right? We had strikes because of, with the actors and the writers, because people with, I don't want to say bad intentions, but I'll say greedy intentions came out with the first proposals which were just ridiculously lopsided against artists in the use of AI. As an artist, where do you stand on just AI in general and that sourcing?
So when it comes to, training a model ethically, I looked through those documents and I was part of a few conversations where we talked about that stuff. And of course, being here where we are, we have lots of friends and associates in the industry who had a lot to say around that time. And so I couldn't see anywhere where it was pointing to unethical training. It just wasn't desirable. It didn't look fair, but not fair doesn't mean always unethical. In fact, they were being pretty transparent about what they planned to do, which was the cause of the uproar. Yeah. And so I was kind of unpopular with my Hollywood friends around that time because I was like, look, y'all, like, we've already normalized this type of exploitation. We give away our data. We give away our information. There's facial recognition technology everywhere. Our biometrics are tapping into everything. And I'm not one of these people who is like, oh, they already got us, so oh well. You know what I mean? I'm not that person. But when it comes to this particularly, I was like, culturally, we've already normalized this. And also we already kind of greenlit this activity prior to AI in Hollywood, giving away our likenesses and they're just formalizing it now for this new technology. We really need to think about what we've normalized culturally that made them think that this was even okay, and my friends didn't like hearing that, so I quieted down.
I have an actor friend who is like pretty much on the same page a little bit, but he's like, oh man, I got so much backlash just for trying to.
It wasn't time. That time in life, I was learning the lesson of know when to keep your mouth shut.
There is
to be quiet.
Yeah.
I want to touch on this too. There is this dark night of the soul that artists have, I think, sometimes with their first interactions with AI when they see, and not just artists, it can be someone, who's just got out of college 3 or 4 years and suddenly seeing, something they've worked on, just being able to be made like this. But artists too, is there's like, well, crap, no, I've been working on this for years and now it's just, anyone can come along and do something. What do you think about that sort of dark night of the soul kind of first impulse that I think a lot of people have?
My service to the artist community is to shake us out of that and kind of snap us out of that. We've adopted, as artists, a lot of the entertainment establishment's values, and so it's got us hung up on things and certain aspects of ownership, and which to a large extent are valid. I'm not here to invalidate those feelings, but we do need to question them and look at them through the lens of history, which shows us that the artist is able to adapt to the technological innovation with the artist with the open mind and the open heart. It's going to be rough in the initial stages of that transition, but ultimately the artists that wraps their mind around things are always changing and change is the only constant will get through this wormhole a bit more gracefully. And so my service, when I sit down and I talk to artists, individuals or groups or individuals or movements, is to remind them that this is a historical pattern and we always come out on top. Eventually the technology is going to follow what we do. We have to master the technology so that we can show people how to use it. And so it's going to be a little scary at first, like, oh man, I did all this work to master this and now anybody can come along. No, anybody can't come along. I'm 20 years deep and 20 plus years deep, in my writing career. No one can write like I can. No one can, I've mastered my voices and my approach and my POV. Now I just apply that through AI. Someone can't just come off the street and do what I do with AI. It would take as much training and self-mastery of my craft, of your craft, in order to accomplish what I accomplished with AI. Someone can't just walk off the street and just do what I did with ChatGPT and Midjourney. It's not happening. So all the principles still apply your own POV and apply your own voice and your own mastering, your own technique, and find what that is, and then move forward with that. Certainly it will level the playing field to a certain extent. Like with music, when hip hop and sampling came along, a lot of musicians were shook, or they were not pleased. They were like, this isn't real music. Oh, okay, anybody can just come in off the street and make a beat and make music. They don't have to have musical training now. These aren't real artists. Like all of that was going on. And so I look through the lens of history at what happened when hip hop bubbled up, when rock and roll bubbled up. A lot of classically trained musicians in other genres were like, what is this? This isn't real music. It's not, and I spent all these years in what do you call it, in conservatory or whatever, like learning my instrument. And here comes this fool who just spent 3 hours in his garage every day. And now he's getting a record deal. And then there was all of that. But everybody found a way, and we adapted, and new musical languages emerged. And similarly, this is what's happening now with AI. New languages will emerge. It's not going to eliminate the more traditional routes. It may change them. It may change how the traditional routes are mastered, but we adapt. That's what we do. We're human. That's literally our brand. Our brand is literally to adapt.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to like what artists will create of it, what kind of new art will come out of it, what kind of new artists, will use it in whatever their particular genre is to make something completely new we hadn't even thought about.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think about like my kids' generation, who will be growing up not knowing what life was like without AI, and how they will process using this technology, like, because they don't have any other reference point, which is great. It's like a blank slate. So I look forward to seeing what the next generation does with the tech.
I love your point though, too, about, there's a scripture, I think, that says something along the lines that, a person who masters their craft will stand before kings. And I think, because of that recognition that they have, right? They've mastered their craft. They're recognized, for it. And, they'll be able to do a lot more with it. So I think your point there was a super valid one. So I wanted to maybe shift the direction of the conversation a little bit, still talking about creativity. But to sort of follow up on the point of creativity, right? In traditional business, it seems like it's undervalued by many organizations. So I was kind of wondering, just given your experience, I know you work, for an agency. How do you think creativity can reshape the future of how we work? Because, like you said, change is constant. I think we're experiencing a lot of change in how we work, but how do you think creativity could either reshape it or it could be further leveraged in how we work?
Well, I think that there's no other way to move forward than with creativity. Right now, humanity's having a big creative moment. We're in a big jam session right now. I don't know if everybody realizes that, but we're in a huge jam session right now, trying to figure out all these pressing problems with all this new technology. Emotions are high, a bunch of stuff has been legalized, so people are in altered mindsets. it's like a it's like a crazy jam session right now, and jam sessions move forward with creativity, and I think that's what we're witnessing. Is everyone's at the table right now. The reason we're here right now, everyone's trying to work through this together, and all solutions are creative. At this point, it's not limited or relegated to the creative class or the artist class. At this moment, I feel like most of humanity is having a big artistic moment. So that's kind of the bigger, higher level bird's eye view answer to the question. To kind of bring it down to earth a bit more, I think that bringing artists in and creatives in to the conversation, the vital conversations, and having them at the table and considered stakeholders is vital right now. When the boardroom is sitting down and getting ready to get to business, I'm finding in spaces that I am in right now and that I'm occupying, there are a lot of enterprise folks. There's a lot of engineers, developers, researchers, academics, CEOs, leaders of different types. And I often find that I'm the only artist in the space.
Oh, wow.
And that's off the strength of my story and my grit and how my trajectory kind of slingshotted me into this space, right? So I'm singular in that way, but I shouldn't be. There should be more artists there. And I think that, to your point, Steve, we aren't being invited. And so I'm starting to kind of speak up about this a bit more in these spaces, like, yo, where are the artists at? How are you? Because this technology is directly impacting the artist community and the artist movements. And also artists and creators are driving the innovation. So why aren't we at the table when the decisions are being made? That's curious to me. And so I'm starting to speak up on it. And I think it's just people don't think about, people kind of take us for granted, I guess, in a sense. They take for granted our contribution. And we've been kind of forced into a position where we just have to give away all of our stuff now. So we have to be giving away our art and our music and our thinking and our vibes because that's how we sustain now, for whatever reason. And so it's just out there. It's like everyone can eat. Everyone's getting fed on all this great art and all this great creativity all the time. It's a constant stream. And then now the content kind of vertical of marketing language has kind of co-opted artistic thinking and made art kind of a bit more of a marketing tool. And so people are just used to being fit and everything. Everybody's creating at a high level. We've all got these great tools and this great gear, and everyone's got the same editing software and all these outlets. And so everybody's outputting art or artistic feeling things at a very high level. So it's very easy to take the artist for granted because we're swimming in this sea of art. And so when it comes time to start making decisions and talking about things, I think people take for granted that an artist needs to be there because they just feel like it's just so plentiful and it's everywhere. And, they're not really that vital to the conversation, but certainly we are.
Right. Yeah, no, I would definitely concur with that. I just, really do feel that their creativity just is under, it's just not given the attention that it deserves. And that then to your point about those that are being creative, and it can be in any field. I do a lot of work with the medical community and with doctors, and there's a lot of very creative, thinkers. Usually they're the ones that, get ahead or create breakthroughs. But it's usually only like you said, just because of their own story or their own effort. So just really feels like it needs more attention. And like you said, I think having the creatives at the table would certainly help those companies. I sort of feel too, the companies that don't probably going to go, by the wayside, and the ones that, and I think, like you said, with history, we've seen this over and over and over again. The companies, the cultures, the people that are the more creative are the ones that can adapt and evolve and even change the landscape.
Certainly. Yeah. And we tend to think in the blind spots, and in the uncomfortable and awkward areas, which often are where you find the solutions and the ideas.
Yeah, I like the idea that we're in this sort of jam session of in the world right now, because that's what it does feel like to me. And it's been, for me too, the past couple years, it's been probably the most fun I've had in work, and also the most artful too, in a way. Just because I think, always thinking about higher purpose and things like that, and how we can come about it, and being creative in that process. From my perspective, it's just been a lot of fun. But, I am also just one voice in there too. And so I really value diversity at the table. So diversity of thought, diversity of, perspectives and ideas and all that. And the more you have that in the conversation, like Mike said, there are going to be businesses that are just going to be kind of sitting still when everyone's moving ahead, because so much more powerful with that empowering voices. If you can do that within your company and have people who can be a subject matter expert at one thing, just there at the table when they need to be, and suddenly be the leader in that area, and then drop back to a follower for someone else to be a leader in another area. When you get into that kind of free flowing jam session, really, with your work, I think that's where you see kind of the best results come out. Is that kind of some of the ideas you're thinking of a jam session? I know you mentioned like AI, and I think reference to possibly psychedelics in the mix there. But yeah, is that what?
Yeah. Yes. It's important in all situations to have affected communities at the table, or representation from affected communities, especially when we're talking about a technology as impactful as AI being deployed into these communities. So, it could be diversity, but diversity for diversity's sake, it, can sometimes actually edge out people who need to be at the table. So we have to be mindful of that too. Like, we want to make sure that a community is properly, represented. And so if we're deploying a technology into the artist community, probably the majority of people at the table need to be creatives or artists as some, in some regard. So, man, I don't know what this streamer thing is that we're using right now, but the little touch-up thing that it's got on my face, like my skin is popping right now. Like I need to walk around.
Looking good.
Yeah, man, this is tight. I need to walk out into the world with this.
Yeah, I haven't put the touch-up thing on yet. I did. I just look too good there. I think.
You got to try it. Yeah, you don't need it. See,
have you ever done this with AI? I just did this with, like, take a picture of myself, go to ChatGPT, load it up, and tell me, describe this person.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it was not kind. It was like,
see, they can't be trusted. These models can't be trusted.
You can't be trusted. I'm like, I'm on it. And then I'm all, okay, do a rendering of this person. And they come back with just some absolute model of a guy, who's like some lumberjack somewhere. And I'm all no, do it again, but not as attractive, please. And they come back and it's still just some, smoldering model type. I'm all, come on, get real here.
That's a rough problem to have. The AI can only see me as sexy. Somebody fix it.
Yeah, that's your problem.
Oh man.
Yo, wow.
Yeah. So, Steve, I was going to talk a little bit about leadership, because we, regardless, I guess, whatever era we've been in, leadership is important, right? And needs to be sort of at the forefront. So, I wanted to ask maybe if you could comment on, regardless of what environment we're in the workplace or our community or wherever we might be, what are the qualities that you, I think, feel are absolutely necessary in the future for a leader to possess?
The leader must put the community first. The true leader. The true leader, I think, will want to not be a leader and want to put their community out front and just represent their community. Empathy, which we know because we're in it a lot. When we think, I know about y'all's work, we think about empathy a lot, but it's becoming a buzzword now, which means that it runs the risk of being taken for granted as an act and a way of life. And that too, I feel like, along with media literacy and critical thinking, should be something that is we need to indoctrinate people with, such that, real leaders, the leaders of the future, can rise up through empathy. And what does that look like? What does empathy in action actually look like? We talk about it a lot, but what does it look like as a way of life? So I think that putting the community first, walking and living in empathy, and then also I think having a sharp political view, and that's not to say like whatever one's politics are, making sure that they're sharp and they're refined and they're developed and they have global context. The leaders of the future, I think, should be able to connect history and history's stories to the happenings of now, and let that connect with their empathy, and let that connect to how they represent for the community. And then we have, I think, a pretty well-rounded leader.
For sure, going to be essential.
That
Yeah,
was a
Steve,
really-
I was going to ask you maybe to comment, because
Yeah,
talk
that's a
about-
really good answer in a lot of ways that I don't think people may be aware of. First, we talk about, like, you got your typical hierarchy of leadership, right, where it's just kind of cracking down on the people below you. But, some's talking about you kind of flipping that in a way where you're in service to everybody. And, so now you're in service. So that's one of the parts of being a leader. And a big part of that is really that true empathy for other people and being in service and understanding, other people's perspectives. That's how you become better when you're in that service role. And then lastly, he kind of mentioned something about understanding history.
Yeah.
And there is a shift in consciousness where it's kind of that next level where you understand the history of people and the consciousness and why they think the way they think, and that you're now able to communicate with them at, whatever stage of consciousness they're at, but do it in a lovingly, empathetic, respectful, graceful way, so that you can have more connection versus all the disconnection and all the stuff we're seeing today. So there's a lot there to what you said, some that I'm like 100% behind. I'm like just nodding.
Yeah. With the history piece too, I want to make sure I'm clear. Like, and then the political piece too is kind of about understanding why these things exist and why structures exist the way that they do, and what is the historical context, and why is this organization here? Why are these people here? Why are these people in this situation? How did this product affect humankind? And what is the history of, I guess, power and money and oppression and freedom and liberation and consciousness expanding? To me, that's all politics. When I say politics, that's what I mean. I'm not talking about like what's happening in November. You know what I mean? I'm talking about the overall geopolitical understanding of things, as best as one can, because it's very tough to be an expert in that. But I think just prioritizing it as something important to consider is the mark of a leader.
100% on all that. And like you're saying, with that history, it's just understanding why things are the way they are, or how they came about to be, why this structure is structured like this, and understanding its strengths, but understanding its weaknesses too, because that's how we're evolving. We're evolving from these structures that aren't quite right, a lot of times. And it's like, okay, how do we improve this? We can include the good stuff. How do we transcend this? That's just the process of evolution. And that's what you see, going over thousands of years and just understanding that that's why we're at where we're at right now. That's why we've got so much problem in our current politics, is because you've got these differing, really different places where people are consciously, and they can only see what they can see at those different stages. And as you grow, it's about that empathy. It's about the taking on more perspectives, understanding more perspectives.
Yes,
Yeah.
education.
Yeah, I think
education is the key.
Yeah, for sure. No, I was just going to add that, regardless of what the challenges might be that we're, our world is going to undertake here in a matter of years, having those right qualities, like you said, empathy, education, being able to think, having a higher level of conscious are going to be key to be able to deal with those challenges. So there's a question I always like to ask all of our guests, and I think right now it's kind of like a good time to ask it, because we were talking about the polarity, I guess, that exists today. We talk a lot on the show about connection, in particularly human connection, and perhaps it is a sad state of affairs that there's a lot of connection that is lacking in our world today. I'm kind of curious, what your thought is about why. And I think maybe I'll know a little bit about what you might say here, but why that connection is lacking. And if you had a magic wand, like what would you have it do in order to create more connection?
Is this the psychedelics part of the conversation?
Go for it.
I'll let that sit where it sits, but that's a tough one to answer, because on one hand, I feel that we are maybe more connected now than
you wanted to say everyone should take some mushrooms or something, right? Is that...
Why not? Everyone who can stand it and who it doesn't put them in harm's way, for sure. But it's a tough one to answer, because on one hand, I feel everyone is as connected as we've ever been. We're more connected now than we've ever been, obviously, for obvious reasons. The quality of that connection, though, is what I think is lacking. The quality of that connection is lacking because it's market driven right now. Our connections are market driven.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, most of our connections these days are maintained and sustained through digital means, apps and platforms and devices, all of which are market driven elements. So, back in the analog days, I'm old enough to remember rotary phones and what have you. This, it almost more or less was like a public service, to have a phone, and otherwise you had to be out and in the community and, your feet on the ground. And then we had kind of more substantial connections that we had to maintain through our own volition. Now our connections are being driven by algorithms and product releases and all of that. So largely anyway, and then branding and content and all of that. So we're more connected in a sense, but the quality of those connections is maybe not the most human or genuine in nature. I don't know what the magic wand is. That's not mushrooms and ayahuasca. Get out, which is really about getting out into nature with humanity and gathering around a campfire and telling stories, and us reprioritizing that is going to be, I think, key and critical to not just reestablishing our connection, but our very survival. I think, I don't know if that was a real answer to the question, but
yeah, no, it was very real. No, it was very real. Right. Thinking about the connection, like Amazon just said everyone's got to go back. No more remote working. You got to go back into work. We're like hybrid. So I'm here in the home studio, and I'll be going into work right after this. But just because we got to do things together that work out well. But most of the time, most of us are working in some remote fashion. But what are your feelings about where do you land on the remote versus hybrid versus in work?
Going into an office, into a building never made sense to me. It never, ever made sense to me, which is part of the reason that I crafted the career that I did, because I was like, something's not right about this. We can do this work at home. But 20 years ago, I was saying this. I was like, why don't we just set up a time where we all come into the office and hang for a day, and then we go our separate ways? Everyone's a responsible adult here. Why are we being? It never made sense to me. So I'm 100%. Let's go as remote as possible, and let's open everyone's time and bandwidth up. So much of our our time on Earth is being spent building somebody else's dreams and lining someone else's pockets in their buildings. And there's no amount of I don't care what kind of job you do. There's no amount of money that can compensate you for your time. So at least let us have a little bit more control over our time, and have a little bit more freedom with that. And then let us decide when it's time to get up, and when we need to get together, and let the community, meaning the teams, in the organization, let us figure out when it's time to get up together, as opposed to mandating a thing.
Yeah, I think there's like with our work too, it's sort of the same thing. It's like, and we're in the process too of just switching into these self-managed teams where, more and more I'm constantly like, well, you guys decide. It's up to you. You guys figure out what works best for you. I think that everything we're doing in work, it kind of always goes back to me anyway, is it's sort of a loving thing. And this is one thing I always ask every guest is, what do you say to those who still believe that love has no place in business?
People still say that out loud?
You get some pushback from people it's like, wow, that sounds really touchy feely, blah, 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 stuff, where I know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're like, no. And I think maybe the Amazon move in some respects is just like, no, we're going to do it this way. You guys need to all come in. And so we can, I don't know what.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to take that on a case by case and try to maybe understand the nuance of why a particular person is saying that at a particular time. But generally speaking, if I had to spray wide on that, I would say, okay, you feel how you feel, let's see how that works out for you. I can understand I think I know where someone might be coming from with that, like there's a time and a place for things. And also I could see how someone might think that might muddy up or make things cloudy in terms of staying focused on what the true intention is, which ultimately, if it's a business, is going to be the bottom line, right? And so when you start bringing in love and empathy into spaces that are about business, I can see the purely business minded being like, what is that? How, so I could see that. I wouldn't judge that person or those people. It's like the scientist, I'm firmly rooted a lot in the sciences. Like I went through school, came out with a biology degree, but I've always had an interest in the applied sciences. So I understand the value in when it's time to be purely left brain and empirical and statistical and kind of cold and objective about things. I understand in the laboratory, it's a good time for that, but science expands outside of the laboratory and it's about nature. And then when we think about business, okay, cool. Your business is your business, but it does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in an ecosystem of humanity and nature and the environment. So if you rule out humanity here, then that means your business, when it amplifies out in the fractal, then it also will deny humanity. And so what service is it providing us if it's devoid of humanity, really? And the future paradigm, I don't think there's any room for anything devoid of humanity. Not even AI.
I think it's that like what you described is basically it's that shift from profit to also adding people and planet into the mix of how you're viewing your work.
Yes.
And some businesses are like trying to codify that in like a triple bottom line, have a bottom line for each of those, which is a good attempt. It's, consciousness kind of trying to solve some of these problems a little bit as, awkwardly and clumsily as we can sometimes, but it's very much what you're saying is like, that's going to be the future of business, is this broader perspective on how we do things.
Yeah, and who knows? I can totally see a new type of business language entirely coming out of this era. Much like in the arts, I can see new visual languages and musical languages and whatever, things that we can't quantify. I was in a chat room the other day with the Runway ML folks and just chatting. Shout out to them. Just chatting through like what this means, what being able to make a motion picture means with AI, and how it probably is going to create a new type of storyteller, a new type of filmmaker, and they were like, well, what does that look like? How is it going to look? And I was like, I don't know, who knows? Only the person or the people who create it will know, and they'll show us and we'll see it when it happens. But I can see the next language coming. And so I can see that applying to business as well. There may be an entirely new type of business language, model, ethos that springs out of this time that we can't really qualify right now or even imagine, but the foundation is being set with folks expanding their consciousness and folks like y'all having these conversations and trying to interject this thinking into the business spaces. That's how it's good. We're seeding that, then we'll see what grows in the next few years. And hopefully my hope is that it will be something new that we can't even imagine right now, with that does prioritize the heart chakra.
Yeah, I agree. Where can people find you or check you out online? Where should they go to? I know you've got a whole bunch of places.
Yeah, LinkedIn is good. Some Patten. And then my portfolio, somepatten.com, has my information on it. And then my social handles are pretty much all Sumkilla, SUMKILLA.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for our listeners. Reminder, we've got shows every Tuesday, Wednesday, and we're live on Thursday. Until next time, everyone, keep building love into your business, and we'll see you on the next Bliss Business Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.